I don't remember much about the day they left me at the orphanage. Just fragments, like shattered pieces of a mirror I've spent my life trying to put back together. I remember my small pink backpack, the way it hung heavy with a few clothes and a worn teddy bear missing one eye. I remember how my father wouldn't look at me, how my mother's hand felt cold when she squeezed mine for the last time. "We'll come back for you soon, Emily," she whispered. I was 5 years old, and I believed her. I remember the smell of the orphanage, industrial cleaner and boiled vegetables, the sound of the heavy door closing behind my parents, the way the social worker's smile didn't reach her eyes when she led me to a room with 4 beds and told me to pick one. "Your parents just need some time to get back on their feet," she said. "This happens sometimes. It'll be okay." But it wasn't okay. Not for a long time. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. I'd sit by the window after school, watching parents come to visit other children, take them home. My backpack stayed packed for the first year, just in case. By the time I was 7, I stopped asking when my parents were coming back. By 8, I stopped believing they ever would. The orphanage wasn't terrible. Mrs. Wilson, the director, was strict but fair. There were other children, some kinder than others. We had food, shelter, secondhand clothes donated by local churches. But it wasn't a home. It wasn't a family. "Emily has such potential," my teachers would tell Mrs. Wilson during parent-teacher conferences. "She's so bright, so determined." I was. I threw myself into schoolwork because it was the one thing I could control, the one place where effort guaranteed results, where I wouldn't be abandoned if I just tried hard enough. At 13, curiosity got the better of me. I asked Mrs. Wilson if she knew anything about my parents. "They still live in town," she said carefully, arranging papers on her desk. "They have 2 other children now, a boy and a girl." The words hit me like a physical blow. They hadn't given me up because they couldn't afford children. They had simply decided I wasn't the child they wanted. "Where?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Emily, I don't think—" "Please," I said. "I just want to know." Mrs. Wilson sighed, removed her glasses. "They live in the big Victorian house on Maple Street, the blue one with the white trim. But Emily, don't go there. It won't bring you any peace." I went anyway, of course. Stood across the street for almost an hour, watching. It was a beautiful house, the kind I used to draw when teachers asked us to draw our homes, a porch swing, flower boxes under the windows, a basketball hoop over the garage. And then I saw them, a boy about 10 throwing a ball to a man, my father, though with more gray in his hair than I remembered, a little girl, maybe 8, running out the front door, and behind her, my mother, laughing. They looked happy, complete, as if there had never been another child, as if I had never existed at all. I ran all the way back to the orphanage, lungs burning, tears streaming down my face. That night I made a promise to myself. I would build my own life, my own success. I would never need them or anyone else ever again. The years passed. I graduated high school as valedictorian, got a full scholarship to college, worked 2 jobs to save money, made a few friends, real friends who knew my story and still stuck around. During my sophomore year of college, Mrs. Wilson passed away. I came back for her funeral. She'd been the closest thing to a mother I'd had, despite her professional distance. After the service, a lawyer approached me. "Emily Bennett?" he asked, extending his hand. "I'm James Harrington, Mrs. Wilson's attorney. She left something for you." It was a letter, written in Mrs. Wilson's precise handwriting. "Dear Emily, if you're reading this, I've moved on to whatever comes next. Don't grieve too much. I've had a good, long life, better than most. I never told you this, but your grandmother, your father's mother, used to visit you. She would come when you were at school, ask how you were doing, if you needed anything. She disagreed strongly with your parents' decision to leave you with us. She died when you were 12. I didn't tell you then because it seemed cruel to introduce someone into your life who was already gone. Before she died, she set up a trust for you. The terms were specific. You would receive everything on your 25th birthday. She wanted you to be mature enough to handle what she was leaving you. I've asked James to contact you when the time comes. I suspect what your grandmother left will surprise you. Use it wisely, Emily. Not for revenge, but for justice, and then for peace. You were always my favorite, though I never should have had favorites. Make a good life, Emily. You deserve it. With love, Margaret Wilson. I folded the letter carefully, tucked it into my purse. There's a trust? I asked the lawyer. Yes, he said. But as the letter says, you won't have access until you're 25. That's 4 years from now, I finished. I understand. I went back to college, finished my degree in business, then my MBA, got a job at a financial consulting firm in Chicago, built a life, piece by piece, made it good, stable. I almost forgot about the trust. Almost. 3 days after my 25th birthday, I received an email from James Harrington's office asking me to come in at my earliest convenience. I took a day off work, drove back to my hometown for the first time in years. James Harrington's office was small but elegant, dark wood furniture, green desk lamps, law books lining the walls. He greeted me warmly, offered me coffee, which I accepted. "Emily," he said, once we were settled. "It's good to see you doing so well. Mrs. Wilson would have been proud." "Thank you," I said. "She mentioned a trust in her letter." "Yes." He opened a folder on his desk. "Your grandmother, Elizabeth Bennet, was quite a remarkable woman, very forward-thinking in her investments. The trust she established for you has grown considerably over the years." He slid a document across the desk. I looked down at the number and blinked. Once, twice. "This is..." I couldn't finish the sentence. "Just over $2 million, he confirmed, but that's not all. From the folder, he produced another document, a deed. "Your grandmother also left you her property, the house on Maple Street." My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. "The house on Maple Street? The Victorian? The blue one?" "Yes," James said, watching me carefully. "The house your parents currently live in. It was your grandmother's property. She allowed your parents to live there rent-free after you came to the orphanage, but she never transferred ownership to them. She left it to you." The world seemed to tilt beneath me. My parents have been living in my grandmother's house all this time? The house that now belongs to me? That's correct. Your grandmother was quite displeased with your parents' decision. This was her way of ensuring you would eventually have some power in the situation. He hesitated. "Of course, what you do with the property is entirely your decision." I sat back in my chair, mind racing. The beautiful Victorian, the home I'd been excluded from, the life I'd been denied, now mine. "They don't know, do they?" I asked. "My parents, they don't know she left it to me." "No," James confirmed. "Your grandmother was explicit in her instructions. They were not to be informed until you took possession. She felt they might attempt to influence you if they knew in advance." I nodded slowly, a strange calm settling over me. "What do I need to do?" "Sign these papers, and the house is legally yours. You can take possession immediately, or you can wait. You can sell it, rent it out, move in yourself. It's entirely up to you." I picked up the pen he offered, felt its weight in my hand. 20 years of abandonment, of wondering why I wasn't enough, of building myself from nothing, all coming down to this moment. "I'll take possession immediately," I said, signing my name with a steady hand. As I drove through town toward Maple Street, I thought about what I would say, what I would do. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand answers, to make them hurt the way I had hurt. Another part wanted to turn around, sell the house from afar, and never look back. But something else rose within me as I pulled up across the street from the blue Victorian. Something stronger than anger or fear. The house looked exactly as I remembered. Beautiful. Well kept. The porch swing still hung from chains. The basketball hoop still stood over the garage, though it looked worn now, unused. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, straightened my blazer, applied a fresh coat of lipstick. Then I grabbed the folder of documents and walked across the street. My heart hammered against my ribs as I climbed the porch steps, took a deep breath, rang the doorbell. The woman who opened the door had more gray in her hair than I remembered. more lines around her eyes and mouth, but I recognized her instantly. My mother. She looked at me blankly for a moment. Then her eyes widened. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Emily?" she whispered. "Hello, Mother," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "May I come in? We need to talk about the house." She stepped back wordlessly, hand still covering her mouth. I walked past her into the foyer, taking in the details. Family photos on the walls, my parents, the boy and girl I'd seen years ago, now teenagers, family vacations, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, 20 years of life that hadn't included me. "Robert?" my mother called, her voice shaking. "Robert, come down here." I heard footsteps on the stairs, then my father appeared. He froze when he saw me, one hand gripping the banister. "Emily," he said, not a question. He recognized me immediately. "Hello, Father," I replied. An awkward silence filled the room. I didn't break it. Let them feel the weight of 20 years, compressed into this moment. "You look good," my mother finally said. "Healthy, successful." "I am," I confirmed. "No thanks to you." My father winced. "Emily, I know you must have questions." "Actually, I don't," I interrupted. "I'm not here for explanations or apologies. I'm here about the house." They exchanged confused glances. "The house?" my father repeated. I opened the folder, removed the deed. "This house, Grandmother Bennett's house. She never gave it to you, did she? Just let you live here." My father's face paled. "How do you know about that?" "Because she left it to me," I said simply. "Along with everything else. I own this house now." The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear the ticking of a grandfather clock somewhere deeper in the house. Could see the blood draining from both their faces. "That's not possible," my father finally said. "My mother wouldn't..." "Wouldn't what?" I asked. "Wouldn't look out for the grandchild you abandoned? Wouldn't try to make things right in the only way she could? You clearly didn't know her very well." I handed him the deed. Watched as he scanned it, his hands beginning to shake. "This is dated today," he said. "Yes," I confirmed. "I turned 25 last week. The terms of Grandmother's trust have been fulfilled. The house is legally mine now." My mother sank into a chair by the door, her legs seemingly unable to support her. "What? What are you going to do?" It was the question I'd been asking myself all the way here. What did I want? Revenge? Justice? To hurt them as they'd hurt me? "You have until Friday to move out," I said, the words coming almost of their own accord. "Friday?" my father exclaimed. "That's impossible. We have lives here, Emily. Jobs. Your siblings are in school. We can't just..." "My siblings," I repeated, the words like ash in my mouth. "The children you kept. The ones you didn't throw away." "It wasn't like that," my mother said weakly. "What was it like then?" I asked, genuinely curious despite myself. She looked at my father, who had gone very still, his eyes fixed on the deed in his hands. "We were young," she began. "So young, and struggling. Your father had just lost his job. We were about to lose our apartment. My parents wouldn't help. His parents, your grandmother, she offered to let us live here, but she said..." She trailed off. "Said what?" I prompted. "She said we weren't ready to be parents," my father finished. "She said we should give you up for adoption, get on our feet first." I stared at him. "So you compromised by dumping me at an orphanage but not actually freeing me for adoption? Making sure I'd stay in limbo my entire childhood? That was your solution?" "We were going to come back for you," my mother whispered. "We always meant to come back." "When?" I demanded. "When exactly were you planning to come back? After you had 2 more children? After you built this perfect life without me? When?" Neither of them answered. The silence said everything. "Friday," I repeated. "You have until Friday." My father straightened his shoulders. "You can't do this, Emily. This is our home. We've lived here for 20 years. And I lived in an orphanage for 13, I countered. Life isn't fair, is it? I turned to leave, but my mother's voice stopped me. Wait, she said. Please, just wait. Can we talk about this? There must be some arrangement we can come to. We can pay rent. Or buy the house from you. Your father's business is doing well now. We have money. I looked at her, this woman who had given birth to me, then given me away, who had tucked in other children while I cried myself to sleep in a room with 3 other abandoned girls, who had never once, in 20 years, come to see if I was okay. I'll think about it, I said. Not because I was considering it, but because I wanted them to feel the uncertainty I'd lived with my entire childhood, the lack of control, the helplessness. As I reached for the door, it swung open. A young woman about my age stepped in, then froze when she saw me. She had my mother's eyes, my father's chin. My sister. Oh, she said. Sorry, I didn't know we had company. She looked from me to our parents, clearly sensing the tension. What's going on? My mother opened her mouth, closed it again. My father just stood there, still holding the deed. I'm Emily, I said, extending my hand. Your sister. Her eyes widened. She didn't take my hand. My... what? Dad? Mom? Emily was just leaving, my father said quickly. Yes, I agreed. But I'll be back on Friday. We have more to discuss. I walked out, feeling 3 pairs of eyes burning into my back. Got into my car, drove to the motel at the edge of town where I'd booked a room. And only then, in the privacy of that anonymous space, did I allow myself to cry. The tears came in a flood, years of pent-up emotion breaking through the careful walls I'd built. I cried for the little girl with the pink backpack, for the teenager who watched her family from across the street, for the woman who had succeeded despite everything, but who still felt like a hollow shell sometimes. When the tears finally stopped, I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what to do next. The lawyer's words echoed in my mind. It's entirely up to you. Mrs. Wilson's letter. Not for revenge, but for justice, and then for peace. What was justice in this situation? What would bring peace? I didn't know. But I had until Friday to figure it out. The next morning, I drove back into town, found a coffee shop, and settled at a table by the window. I needed to think, to plan. Part of me wanted to sell the house immediately, take the money and never look back. Another part wanted to move in, force them to see me every day, a constant reminder of what they'd done. Neither option felt right. My phone buzzed with a text from my boss, asking about a client report. I replied quickly, grateful for the distraction of normal life. Then another text came in, from a number I didn't recognize. This is Sophie, your sister. Can we meet? Please. I stared at the message, heart pounding. How had she gotten my number? Had she asked the lawyer? Or maybe looked me up online? It didn't matter. What mattered was what I would do now. The coffee shop on Main Street. I'm here now, I replied before I could change my mind. 20 minutes later, the bell over the door chimed. Sophie walked in, scanning the room until her eyes found mine. She looked nervous but determined as she approached my table. Hi, she said. Thanks for meeting me. Sit, I offered, gesturing to the chair across from me. She did, fidgeting with a bracelet on her wrist. I looked you up online last night, after you left. You work for Hamilton Financial in Chicago, executive consultant. That's impressive. It pays the bills, I said. How did you find my number? I have a friend who's good with computers, she admitted. I hope that's okay. I needed to talk to you. I waited, saying nothing, making her do the work. I didn't know about you until I was 15, she said finally. I found an old photo in the attic, a little girl I didn't recognize. When I asked Mom, she started crying. Dad finally told me I had an older sister who had been placed in care when they were going through a hard time. Placed in care, I repeated. That's a nice way of putting it. Sophie winced. I know it must have been awful for you. I can't even imagine. They're not monsters, Emily. They made a terrible mistake, but they're not evil people. Did they ever try to find me, check on me, make sure I was okay? She looked down at her hands. I don't know. I don't think so. Dad said it was too painful, that they convinced themselves you were better off without them. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Better off in an orphanage? Without a family? How convenient for them. I'm not defending what they did, Sophie said quickly. I'm trying to understand all of this, and I'm asking you not to make us homeless, please. Us? I asked. You still live there? I'm in my last year of college. I live on campus during the semester, but I'm home for the summer. My brother Ethan is 17. He's still in high school. She hesitated. The house is the only home we've ever known. I took a sip of my coffee, using the moment to collect my thoughts. Tell me something, Sophie. If you found out tomorrow that your parents had left another child at an orphanage, what would you do? She paled. That's not fair. None of this is fair, I pointed out, but I'm genuinely curious. What would you do? She thought about it, her expression troubled. I'd be shocked, horrified. I'd want to meet them, to make sure they were okay, to try to make things right somehow. Even if it meant giving up your home, your comfort, your security. Sophie met my gaze directly. I don't know. I want to say yes, but I don't know if I'm that good a person. Her honesty surprised me. I'd expected defensive anger or emotional manipulation, not this thoughtful uncertainty. At least you're honest, I said. What are you going to do? She asked. Really? I considered the question. What did I actually want? The house? Money? An apology? Revenge? Or something else entirely? I don't know yet, I admitted. But I meant what I said. They have until Friday to figure something out. Sophie nodded slowly. Can I ask, did you ever have a family? After? Did someone adopt you? The question stung more than I expected. No, I aged out of the system at 18. I'm sorry, she whispered, and I could see she meant it. I wish things had been different. So do I said. Every day of my life. She reached across the table as if to touch my hand, then seemed to think better of it. I should go. Thank you for meeting me. For talking to me. I nodded, watching as she stood to leave. Sophie, I called as she reached the door. She turned back. It wasn't your fault. What they did. It wasn't your fault or your brother's. Something like relief flickered across her face. Thank you for saying that. After she left, I sat for a long time, thinking. About family, about choices, about the past and the future, about what Mrs. Wilson had written. Not for revenge, but for justice, and then for peace. By Wednesday afternoon, I still hadn't decided what to do. I drove around town, past my old elementary school, past the community center where I'd spent countless afternoons because the orphanage staff was stretched too thin to pick us up right after school, past the park where I'd watched other children play with their parents while I sat alone. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Sophie. Dad wants to meet. Just the two of you. He'll be at Riverside Park at 4 if you're willing. I almost said no. Almost drove straight back to the motel to pack my things and leave town for good. But something pulled me toward the park. Curiosity, maybe. Or the need for closure. The park was quiet on a weekday afternoon. A few mothers with young children at the playground, an older couple walking slowly along the river path, and my father, sitting on a bench near the water, looking older than he had just 2 days ago. He stood when he saw me approaching. Emily, thank you for coming. I sat on the bench, leaving space between us. What do you want? He sank back down, shoulders hunched. To explain. Though I know no explanation could ever be enough. Try anyway, I said. He took a deep breath. Your mother and I were barely 20 when you were born. I'd dropped out of college. Your mother was working part-time at a diner. My construction job fell through when the company went bankrupt. We were living in a one-room apartment with cockroaches and a landlord threatening eviction. Lots of people struggle, I said. They don't abandon their children. No, they don't, he agreed. We made a horrible, unforgivable choice. We told ourselves it would be temporary, just until we got on our feet. My mother, your grandmother, offered to let us live in her house, but she didn't approve of how we were raising you. Said we were too immature, too selfish. Was she wrong? I asked. He shook his head slowly. No, she wasn't wrong. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the river flow past. After we left you at the orphanage, we moved into the house, he continued. I got a job at a local construction company. Your mother went back to school. Things got better, but the longer we waited to come back for you, the harder it seemed, the more impossible. So you just, what, pretended I never existed? The pain in my voice was raw, undisguised. We told ourselves you were better off without us, he said quietly. That coming back into your life after leaving would just traumatize you all over again, that a clean break was kinder. It wasn't your decision to make, I said, and it wasn't kinder. It was just easier, for you. Yes, he admitted. It was easier for us. We were cowards, Emily. There's no other word for it. His honesty disarmed me slightly, though it did nothing to fill the hollow space in my chest. Your grandmother never forgave us, he continued. She would ask about you every time she visited, would bring gifts for you that we never delivered. Eventually, she stopped speaking to me altogether, just communicated through lawyers about the house. I didn't know she was visiting you at the orphanage. I didn't know about the trust. Though I'm not surprised. She loved you. At least someone did, I said. He flinched as if I'd struck him. We did love you, Emily. We just failed you. Completely. And I am so sorry. Sorry doesn't change anything, I said. Sorry doesn't give me back my childhood. No, he agreed. It doesn't. Nothing can do that. Again, that strange honesty. No excuses, no defensive anger, just a tired acceptance of his own failure. What do you want from me? I asked again. He turned to face me fully. Time. Give us time to find another place, to help the kids finish school. 6 months, maybe. We'll pay rent, whatever you think is fair, and then we'll go. You can sell the house, move in, burn it to the ground, whatever will bring you peace. I looked at him, this man who should have been my protector, but instead had been the author of my greatest pain. He looked old now, defeated. Part of me was satisfied to see it. Another part felt hollow. I'll think about it, I said, standing to leave. Emily, he called as I walked away. For what it's worth, I've regretted what we did every day since, every single day. I paused but didn't turn back. So have I said, and kept walking. Thursday morning, I woke to another text from Sophie. Mom wants to show you something. She'll be at Grandma Bennett's grave at 10 if you want to meet her. I lay in bed, staring at the message. I'd never visited my grandmother's grave. Never had the chance to thank her for caring about me when no one else did. Never got to say goodbye. I showered, dressed, and drove to the cemetery on the edge of town. It was peaceful there, with ancient oak trees providing dappled shade over the gravestones. I found my mother kneeling beside a well-kept plot with fresh flowers already placed in the vase. She looked up when my shadow fell across the grave. You came, she said, sounding surprised. I never got to meet her, I said. Not when I was old enough to remember anyway. My mother nodded, moving aside to make space for me. I knelt down reading the inscription. Elizabeth Ann Bennett, beloved mother and grandmother. Love is the only inheritance that matters. She came to see me at the orphanage, I said. Did you know that? My mother nodded, not meeting my eyes. Yes, she told us she was going to. We asked her not to tell you who she was. We were afraid you'd be confused or that you'd ask to come home with her. The casual cruelty of that decision hit me like a physical blow. So she just came as a kind stranger? For years? She sent you gifts through Mrs. Wilson, paid for extra classes, made sure you had new clothes when you needed them, made sure you were okay. She paused. She said you were brilliant, strong, that you would go further than any of us. I traced my grandmother's name on the stone. She was right. Yes, my mother agreed. She was right about a lot of things. We knelt in silence for a moment, the morning sun warming the grass around us. I have something for you, my mother said finally. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, worn photo album. Your grandmother kept this. She made me promise I'd give it to you someday. I think now is the time. I took the album, opening it carefully. The first photo was of a newborn baby, me, in the arms of a much younger version of my mother. She was looking down at me with what appeared to be genuine love. You were so small, my mother said softly. 5 pounds, 7 ounces, but with such a strong cry. I turned the pages, photos of me as a baby, as a toddler, taking my first steps, playing in a kiddie pool, always with my parents, who looked young and happy and normal, like a real family. What happened? I asked, unable to reconcile these images with my earliest memories. My mother sighed, a deep, weary sound. Life, reality. Your father lost his job. I got pregnant again, but miscarried. We were fighting all the time. The bills kept piling up. We were barely functional. Your father started drinking. I was depressed. We weren't good parents to you, even before we left you. You deserved better than what we could give. So you just gave up, instead of trying to get help? Instead of reaching out to social services or family counseling or literally anything else? Yes, she admitted. We gave up. Your grandmother offered to take you. Just you, but we couldn't bear the thought of giving you to her and not being your parents anymore. So we chose the orphanage instead. Told ourselves it was temporary. I stared at her in disbelief. You refused to let your own mother raise me, but you were fine with strangers raising me? She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. It made sense at the time, in our broken, messed up logic. We thought if you were at the orphanage, we could still be your parents someday. If my mother-in-law raised you, we'd just be visitors in your life. It was selfish. Incredibly, unforgivably selfish. I continued turning pages in the album. The photos stopped when I was about 5, around the time they left me. Then, unexpectedly, they started again. Me at school events, playing in the orphanage yard, receiving an award at a science fair, all taken from a distance, as if the photographer didn't want to be seen. Your grandmother, my mother explained. She went to everything, every school play, every awards ceremony. She said she wouldn't interfere, but she wouldn't miss your life either. I wiped away tears I hadn't realized were falling. Why are you showing me this now? Because you deserve to know that you were loved, she said simply. By her. And by us too, even though we failed you completely. We don't deserve forgiveness. We don't deserve another chance. But you deserve to know that you were wanted, that you were loved, that what happened wasn't because there was anything wrong with you. I closed the album, holding it tightly. I used to think there must have been something wrong with me, something that made me unlovable. Oh, Emily, she whispered. No, never. The fault was entirely ours. You were perfect. I stood, needing to escape the intimacy of this moment, the dangerous pull of connection I was beginning to feel. I need to go. Of course, she said, not moving from her place by the grave. Thank you for coming, for listening. I hesitated, then asked the question that had burned in me for years. Why did you have more children? If you couldn't handle being parents, why did you have 2 more kids? She looked down at the grave, as if seeking guidance from my grandmother. We were different people by then. Your father had been sober for years. I'd gotten help for my depression. We had stability, a home. We thought we were ready. She looked up at me, eyes red-rimmed. But there wasn't a single day when we held them that we didn't think of you. Not one birthday, one Christmas, one milestone that we didn't wonder where you were, what you were doing, if you were happy. But you still didn't come looking for me, I pointed out. No, she acknowledged. Like your father said, we were cowards. We told ourselves it would be worse for you if we came back into your life only to disappoint you again. That a clean break was kinder. We were wrong. I clutched the photo album to my chest, feeling my careful composure starting to crack. "I'll see you tomorrow," I said, and walked away before I could break down completely. Back at the motel, I laid the album on the bed and sat staring at it. Then I pulled out my laptop and opened my emails. There was one from James Harrington, checking in. I replied, asking if he could meet me at the house on Maple Street tomorrow morning. Then I opened the photo album again and went through it slowly, page by page. My grandmother had been there all along, watching over me from a distance, making sure I was taken care of in the ways that mattered. It didn't erase the pain of abandonment, but it was something. A tether to family I hadn't known existed. I spent the rest of the day walking around town, thinking about what to do, about what justice would look like in this situation, about what would bring peace, not just to my parents, but to me. By evening, I had made my decision. Friday morning dawned clear and bright. I dressed carefully in a blue suit that made me feel powerful, gathered my documents, and drove to the house on Maple Street for the last time. James Harrington was already there, waiting in his car. He got out when he saw me arrive. "Good morning, Emily. Are you sure about this?" "Yes," I said. "Let's get it done." We walked to the door together. This time it was my father who answered. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Behind him I could see boxes stacked in the hallway. They had been packing. "Emily," he said, "Mr. Harrington." "May we come in?" I asked formally. He stepped aside, leading us to the living room where my mother, Sophie, and a teenage boy who must be my brother Ethan were waiting. They all looked nervous, eyes darting between me and the lawyer. "I've made my decision," I said without preamble. They all tensed, preparing for the worst. "I'm putting the house in a trust," I continued. "The Bennett Family Trust. Mr. Harrington has drawn up the papers." My father frowned. "I don't understand." James cleared his throat. "If you'll allow me to explain, the Bennett Family Trust will own this property. Emily will be the trustee with full control over the assets. The terms are as follows. Robert and Susan Bennett may continue to live in the house until Ethan Bennett graduates from college, rent-free, provided they maintain the property in good condition and pay all taxes and insurance." My mother gasped softly. "Emily." I held up a hand, not finished yet. "After Ethan's graduation, the house will be sold. The proceeds will be divided equally among the four of us: Sophie, Ethan, myself, and a scholarship fund for children aging out of foster care." Silence filled the room as they absorbed what I was saying. "You're letting us stay?" my father finally asked. "I'm not making my sister and brother homeless," I clarified, "and I'm not looking to punish you beyond what you've already experienced these past few days. This seems like justice, not revenge." "It's more than fair," my mother whispered. "More than we deserve." I shrugged. "Maybe, but it's what I need to move forward." James laid out the papers on the coffee table. "If you're all in agreement, we can sign today." My parents exchanged glances, then nodded. "We agree," my father said. "And thank you, Emily." I didn't respond to his gratitude. Couldn't. Instead, I turned to Sophie and Ethan. "This affects your futures too. Are you okay with it?" Sophie nodded immediately. "Yes, it's more than fair." Ethan, who hadn't said a word to me yet, looked confused. "Why are you doing this? They left you. Why aren't you more angry?" "I am angry," I said honestly. "I probably always will be, to some degree. But this isn't about them anymore. It's about me. About what I need to heal. And continuing this cycle of hurt won't heal anything." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, I agree too." James handed out pens, and one by one, we all signed the documents. When it was done, he gathered the papers, nodding to me. "I'll file these today. It's done." "Thank you," I said, standing to walk him out. At the door, he shook my hand. "Your grandmother would be proud," he said quietly, "and so would Mrs. Wilson." After he left, I turned back to face my family, because that's what they were, whether I wanted them to be or not. The people I was connected to by blood and history, for better or worse. "I'll be going back to Chicago tomorrow," I said. I've left my contact information with the lawyer. If there are any issues with the house, you can reach me through him." "Will we see you again?" my mother asked, her voice small. I hesitated. "I don't know. I need time, space." "Of course," my father said quickly. "Whatever you need." Sophie stepped forward hesitantly. Could I maybe visit you sometime in Chicago?" The request surprised me. "Why would you want to do that?" "Because you're my sister," she said simply. "And I'd like to know you, if you'll let me." I felt something crack open inside me, a door I'd kept firmly shut for decades. "Maybe. Someday. I'll think about it." She nodded, accepting this small concession as enough for now. As I turned to leave, Ethan suddenly spoke up. "Wait." I paused, looking back at him. "I made something. For you." He disappeared into another room, returning with a framed photograph. He handed it to me awkwardly. "It's from Grandma's album. Sophie showed me. I thought you might want it." It was a picture of my grandmother holding me as a baby, both of us smiling at the camera. He'd restored the old photo, enhanced it, framed it beautifully. "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched. "This means a lot." He shrugged, uncomfortable with the emotion of the moment. "It's just a picture." But it wasn't just a picture. It was proof that I'd been loved, that I'd belonged to someone. I left the house on Maple Street for the last time, carrying the framed photo and the album my mother had given me. Not forgiveness, I wasn't ready for that, might never be, but perhaps the beginning of something. Understanding, maybe, or healing. As I drove away, I didn't look back. The past was the past. I couldn't change it. But the future, that was still mine to shape. And for the first time in 20 years, it felt wide open with possibilities. 6 months after my return to Chicago, a text from Sophie appeared on my phone. "Is your offer to visit still open?" "I have a break from school next month." I stared at the message, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to say no, to keep the careful distance I'd maintained since leaving my hometown. But another part, a part that had been growing stronger over these months, wanted to say yes. "Sure. Let me know the dates," I replied before I could change my mind. Sophie arrived on a snowy Tuesday in February, her cheeks pink from the cold as I met her at the train station. There was a moment of awkwardness. Do we hug? Shake hands? Before we settled on a brief, slightly stiff embrace. "Thanks for letting me come," she said as we walked to my car. "Thanks for wanting to," I replied honestly. I'd spent the week before her visit in a cleaning frenzy, making sure my apartment was spotless, the guest room perfectly prepared. Now, showing her around, I felt strangely nervous, as if her approval mattered. "This is amazing," she said, taking in the view of Lake Michigan from my living room windows. "You've done so well for yourself, Emily." "I've been lucky," I said. She turned to me, expression serious. "Not lucky, determined, strong." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I changed the subject. "Are you hungry? I thought we could go to this Italian place down the street for dinner." Over pasta and wine, we navigated the strange waters of getting to know a sibling as an adult. She told me about her studies in graphic design, her boyfriend of 2 years, her dreams of working for a major gaming company. "What about you?" she asked. "Outside of work, I mean. What do you do for fun?" I realized with a start that I didn't have a ready answer. "Work takes up most of my time," I admitted. "But I like to read. Go to the theater sometimes. Travel when I can." "Any boyfriends? Girlfriends?" I shook my head. "I've dated, but nothing serious. I've always found it hard to let people in." Sophie nodded, understanding without needing further explanation. "That makes sense, given everything." Later that night, sitting on my couch with cups of tea, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "How are you really doing, with everything that happened, with us?" I looked out at the city lights, considering my answer. "Some days are easier than others," I said finally. "I've spent a lot of time in therapy, working through it. But there are still moments when the anger comes back, or the hurt, like a wave I didn't see coming. I can imagine, she said softly. Mom and Dad, they're trying to be better. They're in therapy too. Dad's even volunteering at a youth center, helping kids from difficult backgrounds. I felt a twinge of something, not quite forgiveness, but perhaps a loosening of the knot of resentment I'd carried for so long. That's good. They don't expect you to forgive them, Sophie continued carefully. They just want you to know they're trying to be people worthy of the second chance you gave them with the house. It wasn't for them, I reminded her. It was for you and Ethan, and for me. I know, she said, but it changed them anyway, in a good way. We fell silent, the weight of shared history between us. Can I ask you something? Sophie said after a while. Something I've always wondered? Go ahead. Was it awful, growing up in the orphanage? I considered how to answer. The easy response would be yes, it was terrible. But the truth, as always, was more complicated. Sometimes, I said honestly, there were definitely hard days. Holidays were the worst, watching other kids go home with relatives while I stayed behind. But there were good things too. Mrs. Wilson was strict but fair. I had a few close friends. And your grandmother, our grandmother, she made sure I had opportunities. Piano lessons, summer camps, good clothes. But you were alone, Sophie said, her eyes filling with tears. Yes, I acknowledged. I was alone, and that was the hardest part. Not having anyone who was just mine, who had to love me no matter what. Sophie wiped her eyes. I wish I'd known. I wish I could have been there for you. You were a child yourself, I reminded her. None of this was your fault. I know, but still. She hesitated, then asked, Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive them? Mom and Dad? I sighed. I don't know, I'm working on it in therapy, but forgiveness isn't something you can force. It comes when it comes, if it comes at all. And us? She asked, voice small. Me and Ethan, can we be, I don't know, a family somehow? The question caught me off guard. Family, such a loaded word. We can be something, I offered. I'm not sure what yet, but I'm open to finding out. Her smile was worth the uncertainty of my answer. The visit lasted 3 days. We went to museums, ate at my favorite restaurants, walked along the lakefront despite the winter chill. On her last night, Sophie gave me a small wrapped package. It's from Ethan, she explained. He made it. Inside was a hand-carved wooden box with the Bennett family crest, which I hadn't even known existed, inlaid in different types of wood on the lid. He's really talented, I said, genuinely impressed. He's applying to art school next year, Sophie said. He was hoping, he was wondering if you might come to his senior art show in the spring. Only if you want to, of course. I ran my fingers over the smooth wood of the box. Maybe. Tell him I'll think about it. After Sophie left, my apartment felt strangely empty. I'd grown used to her presence in just a few days, her laughter, her questions, her genuine interest in my life. It was disconcerting how quickly she'd carved out a space for herself. In the months that followed, we texted regularly. She sent photos of her design projects, asked my opinion on career decisions, shared funny stories about her life. Gradually, Ethan began texting too, awkward at first, then more naturally as we found common ground in our love of art and design. My parents remained respectfully distant, communicating only through the occasional formal email about house maintenance or tax payments. I appreciated their restraint, their understanding that reconciliation, if it ever came, would need to be on my terms, in my time. In April, an invitation arrived in the mail, Ethan's senior art show. I propped it on my mantle, undecided. Then, a week before the event, my phone rang with an unknown number from my hometown. Hello? I answered cautiously. Emily? A young male voice. It's Ethan, your brother. Hi, Ethan, I said, surprised. We'd texted, but he'd never called before. Everything okay? Yeah, fine, He paused, and I could almost see him gathering his courage. I know Sophie gave you the invitation to my show, and I wanted to say, it would mean a lot if you came, but I understand if you don't want to. The vulnerability in his voice touched something in me. Why is it important to you? I asked, not unkindly. We barely know each other. He was quiet for a moment. Because you're part of my story too, even though we just met, and my art is about family. All the complicated, messy parts of it. It wouldn't feel complete if you weren't there. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of his words. I'll think about it, I promised. That's all I'm asking, he said. Thanks, Emily. The following weekend found me driving back to my hometown, a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I'd booked a hotel room, unwilling to stay at the house despite Sophie's offer. Some boundaries were still necessary. The art show was being held at the high school gymnasium, transformed with portable walls displaying student work. I arrived 30 minutes after the official start time, hoping to blend into the crowd. But Sophie spotted me immediately, waving excitedly from across the room. You came! She exclaimed, hugging me. Ethan's going to be so happy. Where is he? I asked, glancing around. Over by his installation. Come on, I'll take you. I followed her through the crowd, nodding politely at curious glances from townspeople who clearly recognized me from my previous visit. When we reached Ethan's display, I stopped short, breath catching in my throat. It was a series of intricately carved wooden frames, each containing family photographs. But they weren't ordinary frames. Each was designed to tell a story. One frame looked like broken chains being repaired, another like roots growing from a severed tree trunk, a third like puzzle pieces that didn't quite fit together, but were beautiful in their imperfection. The photographs inside were just as meaningful. My parents' wedding, Sophie and Ethan as children, the blue Victorian house, a photo of me from my grandmother's album, a recent picture of Sophie and me in Chicago, and in the center, a new photo of all four of us, clearly digitally created since we'd never actually all been in the same place at the same time. What do you think? Ethan asked, appearing beside me. I struggled to find words. It's beautiful and painful and honest. He nodded, satisfied with my assessment. That's what I was going for. The title, I said, noticing it for the first time. Fractured but not broken. Yeah, he said. That's us, right? The Bennett family. Fractured but not broken. I felt tears prick at my eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. Maybe, I conceded. Emily. I turned at the sound of my mother's voice. She and my father stood a few feet away, uncertainty written across their faces. We can go if you'd prefer, my father said quickly. We don't want to make you uncomfortable. I looked at them, really looked at them, for the first time. They seemed older, more humble than when I'd last seen them. Their eyes held a cautious hope that they tried to suppress. It's okay, I said. This is Ethan's night. We should all be here for him. Relief washed over their faces. My father nodded, keeping his distance. My mother offered a small, tentative smile. Thank you, Ethan said quietly, for coming, for being part of this. I looked back at his artwork, the beautiful, honest depiction of our complicated family, and felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe acceptance. Recognition that the past couldn't be changed, but the future was still unwritten. Thank you for inviting me, I said. Your work is extraordinary. Later, as I prepared to leave, my mother approached me alone. We're so proud of you, Emily, she said softly. The woman you've become. I know we had nothing to do with it, but we're proud nonetheless. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. If you ever wanted to have coffee sometime, just to talk. No pressure, no expectations. She trailed off, leaving the invitation open-ended. Maybe someday, I said. Not a yes, but not a definite no either. She accepted this with grace. Drive safely back to Chicago. As I drove home the next day, I thought about Ethan's title. Fractured but not broken. Was that true? Could something so deeply damaged ever truly heal? I didn't know, but for the first time, I was willing to consider the possibility. Back in my apartment, I placed the photo album from my grandmother on my coffee table. Next to it, I set the carved box from Ethan and the framed photo he'd given me months ago. Physical reminders of a family I was only beginning to know. Then I took out my phone and, after a moment's hesitation, added a new contact. Mom. Not because I was ready to use it, but because someday I might be. And for now, that possibility was enough.